Now I've got to wait for this to wake up. God, please give me the words your people need here today. Amen. So what do we do about these miracles of Jesus? How do we negotiate meaning into the acts that even today are miracles? Do we accept the words as written, believing in a literal miracle? Do we use our understanding of science to try and explain how the mud and saliva did what they did? Do we turn the whole thing into a metaphoric lesson, talking about being blind as a metaphor for lacking understanding? Do we throw the whole message out as magic mumbo-jumbo that's meaningless in a science-based world? There's a lot of ways that we can interact with the miracles. But today, I'd like to talk about the Pharisees, because we have a lot of Pharisees in our lives today. So, I'll call them bureaucrats and bureaucracies. And for me, for this definition for here, I'm talking about people with authority and no accountability, who interfere with other people's lives and don't make their lives better. So Jesus does this thing, and the religious leaders of that day just can't get a grip on it. How dare you do this on the Sabbath? Help someone? Really? How dare you do this? He's a sinner. He has to be a sinner. Now explain it again. Explain it again how he restored your sight. So this poor ex-blind man has to repeat his story again and again. And then finally says, go talk to Jesus himself. Ask him. He's the one that did it. And then they called in his parents because they couldn't believe that it really happened. And the parents said, yeah, it did. It happened, but he's an adult. Go talk to him. And I'm sure that this poor ex-blind man, by the time he was done with the Pharisees, wanted to spice up his language with some serious, colorful metaphors about female dogs and self-gratification. I picture Samuel L. Jackson playing the ex-blind man saying, bitch, please. So why didn't the leaders understand what happened? They did understand.
Can I move this back so I can see you better?
Oh, yeah,
Sorry,
sure.
it's zoomed in. I noticed it.
Thank you.
No problem.
Still working?
Yeah. Okay, you're
Awesome.
good.
So why didn't they believe? They did believe. They just didn't like it because Jesus wasn't under their control. He threatened their power. So what could they do? Well, they called the guy, they called the parents, they tried to discredit Jesus. But really, there wasn't anything they could do. There isn't anything they could do to Jesus. So the parents understood the audience. They understood who they were talking to. And they weren't going to fall into the religious traps that were laid for them. So instead of saying a straightforward no, the parents just passed the buck to the most common person they could have. So they're talking to these people, and the bureaucracy's circling the drain. Straightforward answers when you're talking to somebody like that are not going to help you. The truth won't help you either. Bureaucrats don't want the truth. They want to be affirmed in their authority. The thing is, authority is based on a lie, or when authority is based on a lie, it's a shaky foundation, especially if you're trying to build a church. So when all of this is happening, you notice they're talking about the guy that used to be blind. They talk about the parents. What did Jesus do? Well, I read around this reading to kind of figure that out, and he left. He went on to continue his ministry, seemingly ignoring this whole thing. And later, the Jewish people challenged his authority. And again, he flees for a time. And most importantly, he continues to do the work he was called to do. So I think this is a good spot to add what was written in 1 Samuel 2. So when Samuel was called by the Lord to anoint David, his first comment, his first response was, "Are you kidding? The king will kill me." Now, did God put a hex on the king so that he could safely do it? Did God change the king's heart so he could safely do it? No. He told Samuel, lie to the king. Say you're bringing a heifer over there for a ceremony, for an offering. Didn't tell the truth. Didn't tell Samuel to tell the truth. And I find that interesting. I find that very interesting. So did Samuel openly defy the king? No. He did lie. And I think if you read through the Bible looking at places, there's a lot of places where Jesus, or in the Old Testament, God tells the people to lie in service of the mission that they've been called to do. So in this context, like we're discussing today, the king represents the bureaucratic state who had the real authority. Authority is important, but he really didn't have integrity. Samuel didn't directly challenge this authority. To do so meant his death. Instead, he found a way to work around them using lies and subterfuge. We all deal with bureaucracies. Without really looking at it, I would assume the Bible would tell us to deal ethically and morally with any civil or church authority. Render unto Caesar, turn your other cheek, stuff like that. These readings strongly imply the opposite. I have to ask why. I hope I've opened the question in all of you too. Why did God tell these people to lie to the authorities? Why was that the right answer? Isn't that kind of odd? That doesn't seem very Jesus-y, you know? That doesn't seem to match the message that Jesus normally and God normally does. So let's dig into the context of Israel at the time of Jesus. They were subjugated by Rome. They were a conquered people. This is a mindset pretty foreign to most Americans. That's because the United States historically considers itself a victor and not the vanquished. Well, not all Americans. The oppressed minorities of U.S. culture can relate personally with the first century in a way that white male cisgender straight guys can't. Well, not yet anyway. This is why liberation theology is such a great fit for those minoritized and traumatized people. It aligns people seeking liberation today directly with those people seeking liberation in the first century. Even 2,000 years ago, bureaucrats didn't listen. People with authority and no accountability don't care about anyone but themselves. It seems to me that this is human nature and not some special situation. God does what God does, but we here doing the work cannot change human nature. We can't change human nature, but we can, and we should, and we must change the paradigm. Our government, our civil authorities, our religious authorities must be accountable to the people. You see, you can't change the behavior, but you can change the accountability. You can change the responsibility. A friend from my school, my seminary, went through hell trying to get ordained. Her denomination is an open and affirming denomination, a supporting denomination, but nonetheless, the bureaucrats on her ordination committee put roadblock after roadblock. They wanted this wonderful black woman to submit to their authority and to act white so she could get ordained. And she absolutely would not do that. And God bless her for making the decisions she did. She didn't humble herself to these white men. That culturally is unacceptable. The visibility, I'm sure that you guys are all listening to this and saying, oh my God, who are these people? They should have known better. So what did she do? She stood up for herself, demanded equality, and demanded to get ordained, and they conceded. And then she filed complaints with the church leadership about how they conducted themselves. We still haven't heard the results of that. She's still in class with me. This all happened relatively recently. For that committee, it was about personal power and not divine authority. And that happens all over the world, all the time, with all of us. We have to hold people in authority accountable for their actions. And yes, that means I expect to be held accountable too. So Jesus dealt with the bureaucrats by interacting when he had to, and then continued with his ministry. He didn't let them stop him. You see, the natural movement of bureaucrats is a circle. You never get anywhere when you're going in a circle, but their object is not to get anywhere, it's to protect their power. So if you get caught in that vortex, if you allow yourself to be caught in that vortex, you're traveling in a circle too, and you're not getting anything done. So you can't. You have to render what you have to the bureaucrats, and otherwise ignore them and go about your business. Now, I'm not advocating breaking the law. Just to be clear, I'm not advocating breaking the law. But I am saying that we have to stand up for ourselves and stand up for our mission, our ministry. And we can't allow bureaucrats to derail us. Avoid the circle. If it takes subterfuge, all's the better. So Louis L'Amour, a famous Western writer, said, "Lie to a liar, for lies are as coin. Steal from a thief, for that's easy. Lay a trap for the trickster and catch him at the first attempt. But beware of an honest man." We have to be that man, that woman, the honest one. Because we won't be deterred. We won't be tricked. We will continue. If we must use subterfuge to protect, to heal, to teach, to honor God, we must take care not to become the lie. We serve a loving God who is also a practical God. She knows some creative license when dealing with obstructing people may be necessary. Keep doing the work you are called to do, regardless of those who doubt or interfere. If you can mollify the bureaucrats in your life, do so. If it's easy to negotiate, then that should be the path. Regardless, continue to do the work you are called to do. Perform the miracles that are given to you. Serve the path of righteousness, even when that path has briars and obstacles. The path that brings us closer to God is the right path. Embrace the work, the walk, the path, and feel free to tell the bureaucrats in your life to go to hell. Amen.
So be gay, do crimes.
Be gay, do crimes? Okay.